Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's KillerMiller, and today I'm bringing you guys a video on my Valorant agent balance patch. So what this is going to be is a video talking about all the agents in the game, where their current state is, and if I would nerf or buff them just to kind of balance out the game more. Now, a couple things I do want to say that I think the game is actually in a really good spot right now. So I really just do this for fun. If I was actually on the team, who's to say if I were to like fully legitimately commit these types of changes? But these are more so just my opinions on where I think the current agents in the game land, whether they're good or bad, and if I think they're too good, pull some power down. If I think they're not good enough, bring some power up. Stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk about that, and yeah, let's get into it. So first and foremost, disclaimer, these are just my opinions, so don't hate me for these things. This is just kind of how I see the game, and once again, part two of this is, it's not like I spent months thinking on this. Whenever you have a game that requires balancing changes and stuff like that, there's a lot of time, a lot of thought, and you put a lot of different like looks into why these changes are good or bad, and or why you should or shouldn't change an agent. I just kind of drew this up in a few hours, so it's not like there's a ton of thought. That being said, and the reason I'm including that is because it's very possible, you might think that for some reason one of the changes I think is stupid, and then it's like that's probably not something I considered, so you're probably correct, or vice versa. Maybe this is like too big or too small of a change, whatever the case may be. So I did put that in there, and kind of how I feel that way. I'm going to talk about reworks in this, and that's not even just character reworks, more so just ability reworks, and some of the stuff like that, I don't actually know what I would do. Some of that stuff is just simply like, I think this ability and or character or whatever should be fully changed somehow, and it's not something I would actually know how to do. So I just figured I'd throw that in there real fast too, because I don't want to sit there and pitch a new agent. That's not the point of mine. So usually I might kind of bring that up there. And the last thing is I mainly focus these changes on high level comp play, not necessarily ranked or casual play, even ranked at a high level, not even. There's a couple things in here that will go into that. I'll go ahead and say it. I talk about Reyna in here, and one of the things that I would change to her would actually like adjust her a little bit in kind of both, but most of these things are really, I'm just worried about like in competitive play, like high level team play, all that good stuff. Not even just high level, just any sort of team play that's, at like a high elo level of like Immortal, Radiant, like tier 3, whatever level you want to use. Even stuff like that is kind of what I mean. So, yeah, let's get into it. First and foremost is Brimstone. I went down the list of just literally the Valorant agents where you can click down and see them, and I just did it in the order that's in. So, starting off is actually Brim, and I would actually do nothing. I think he's in a very good state currently. There's no changes that I think you can make that's going to make him piss or excuse me, I said that incorrect. You can make him get picked more or less, unless it's like really drastic, which he just doesn't need. Right now, he's preferential to players and some maps. So yeah, usually you just see Brimstone on maps that he usually gets more value out of. The common ones are Bind and Fracture. But some people play him on Ascent, some people play him on Haven, some people play him on Split. Well, he's not playing on Split really at all, but even then, some people play him and that just comes down to the player preference, so usually more often than not. So whenever you have a character like this that is only really picked or not picked because of the way somebody feels about playing them, that usually shows that they're in a good state, because it's like, oh, it's not like this character's insanely overpowered or very bad. It's just like, I just would rather play this one for whatever like reason. It fits me better as a player, fits the team better, whatever the case may be. So Brim's in a really good spot, and yeah, just kind of think I'd add that. So Phoenix is a rework. This is kind of what I was touching on early on. You need to totally overhaul this character. I don't know what I would do to actually make him meta. There's no changes you could realistically make that do not just make him insanely overpowered, or that make him played over like a Skye or a Breach or a KayO or none of that, right? I think one thing Riot has to think about with Phoenix is the fact that I don't really see any flash duelists ever being reliably played. Like, it's just really not gonna happen, because like if you want flashes, you're gonna just pick an initiator, because like why would you flash for yourself when you can have your teammate flash for you with a character that's way better? Anyways, I can go on about this forever. But yeah, I don't think a flash duelist is going to really work in this game unless it's a very unique flash like Yoru. And then also about Yoru, he's just got a completely unique like kit, so his is just a little different. It's like whatever the whole point of Phoenix when he was designed and early on was like, I flash myself in, and like that just doesn't really work with the current initiators that exist. So he needs a complete change. I don't know what it would be. I had some ideas, but once again, I don't know how I'd rework the character to make him work, so I can't really say that. But Phoenix just needs a complete overhaul. He's kind of the worst character in the game. Everybody kind of knows that. So Sage is a buff. Her heal currently heals for 65 health, and I would personally bump that to 90 health. So Sage is not in a bad spot and comes into the meta for playstyle or for specific maps, but her heal is just kind of bad. Giving it some more kick could make some maps where she is debatable much more justified. So the thing about Sage is she's really plug and play, which is really good, and she only really is picked for value on maps she has value. Icebox is the most common one. You see Sage like almost every time there. Fracture, you see her a lot, and even a couple other maps she has some pick. But the thing about their heal and like changing the heal is not necessarily going to make her picked more or less per se, but it could be justified. Some teams might say, we want to try running a Sage on like an Ascent or something. And it's like, why would we run her over this agent? And it's like, okay, well, by the way, Sage's heal now will like almost fully heal you. That heals, that extra 25 health might like make you survive an extra bullet or so. And that could be justifiable. So it's kind of a small thing. There's not really much you could do to Sage that would make her realistic picked more or less, unless once again it was drastic. But this might actually help her see some more justifiable pick. And even on a map like Icebox, where she's almost 100% pick rate, the teams that don't play her might also try to play her more. So I just think it's kind of weird having a heal on an agent that just does not give you almost all of your health back. That just kind of feels awkward too. So I just think it's kind of, it's more so just a nice adjustment is honestly the way I'd look at it. So Sova is a buff. His ult is currently 8 points. I would make it 7. So his ult was insanely powerful when you used to pair it with the drone, but now the drone only scans twice. The ult has lost a lot of value. So bringing it back to 7 points will round that back out some. And honestly, I didn't think his ult needed to be changed. It needed to be 8 points in the first place. So yeah, it kind of speaks for itself. Not only does drone only scan twice, which makes it very, very hard for you to actually get a kill with it. Well, not very hard, but much, much harder. It also flies less distance, so it's like you're not going to always be able to get it as deep as you want to find a target with it, whatever. Now, obviously, I understand that you don't just use Sova ult with the drone. I totally get that, but this is, the drone is a big part of what makes the ult good, and now that the drone is hurt a lot, bringing his ult back down to 7 points will kind of make that just make a lot more sense, because it's like, Sova ult has always been seen as definitely one of the better ults in the game. Not like it's like top tier, but it's definitely like good, like on a tier list to be like A tier for sure. But now that his drone is hurt, it's like back to like B or something like that, right? And it's like, I think a character like Sova's ult should be pretty solid. So I think that's just making it 7 points would just give it more value. Plus, like, it's his ult being an 8-point ult. Like, I never really fully saw being justified. I did a little bit once again with the drone, but now that the drone's worse, it kind of makes more sense. So anyways, that's something I would do to Sova, just to kind of give him a little more like kick. It's once again not really gonna make him be picked more or less, but it's just like, it just doesn't feel good to play with because of how like you'll get like 1 ult per half, and it's like this might help you get 2 sometimes, stuff like that. Viper is nothing. I think Viper's in a solid spot, maybe a bit underwhelming on some maps, but not in a way where she is bad. You just get less value. I could see a world where the orb and wall, or that whatever the orb and wall are up, it drains 1.5 times instead of the current 2 times. But I don't think the current state of its drain is bad. So yeah, Viper is kind of a niche pick. For a while, she was a staple, like 100% pick rate on bind and like very, very large pick rate on like split and stuff. But these changes kind of pulled her back out, but she still can be picked there. Once again, a lot of the reason Viper is not picked on those maps as much is primarily the nerf. I will definitely say that, but also because Chamber exists. It's like Viper kind of slotted into your flex spot, not like flex as in like your Skye, your KayO flex, but more so of just like on a map like Split and Bind where we have all of our other bases covered. It's like, what do we play? And it's like Viper would just always slot because she made the most sense. But now it's like Chamber every single time. So it's like, that's kind of the idea that goes into that. And so that being said, I think whenever a character like Chamber that takes up that flex role is constantly in there because of how good the agent is, you'll kind of see more Viper pop up. And you're starting to see some teams experiment it with a little bit, whenever Chamber was sort of changed recently-ish with the trip change. Some teams are kind of pulling the Viper back in. The guards kind of flirting with it a little bit more back on Split and Bind. M3C or Old Gambit is still kind of messing with it a little bit. Some teams are starting to pull the Viper back in. So I still think she's good, and which is why I would not change anything. It's just a lot of the reason is because a character like Chamber kind of takes up that slot better in a different way. So that's kind of the thing about her. She's still a good agent. So overall, I wouldn't actually do anything to her. Cypher is a buff. Cage, re-add the slow and increase the price, but do not let it slow as much as it did in beta, but still a little bit. And then make sure from the ult that goes from the current yellow outline to a Sova dart scan. So the thing about Cypher, he just does not match well with other Sentinels. He needs more in his kit to allow him to be a reliable option. The slows would benefit him heavily and give him more options to actually anchor in a more proper fashion. And the thing about his ult, I'm not here to read the rest of that. His ult just sucks, like, for what it does. So if you are to add the cage slow back, first of all, you have to increase the price to make that more justified. So I think 150 is good, potentially even 200, depending on how the slow is. But I don't know on that. But also make that slow like less than what it was. The slow it wasn't that bad in beta as far as like what it actually did, but it still slowed you. And so that being said, like I think you should put it back because it would actually make him make more sense and actually be able to like hold down a site in a different fashion than he currently does. But not in the way the slow used to operate. It was pretty hefty. So like I don't know exactly the numbers on this, and I'm not going to sit here and try and guess. And I also tried to find it and I couldn't. But just make the slow less of what it was, but still bring it back is what I would see. And then his ult is one of the worst in the game. Not even necessarily because it shows you where everybody is. Like, that's obviously insane. But that yellow outline, I know everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you've played against a Cypher and you ult somebody and they're like behind a box in front of you, it's literally, it feels like a nerf. Like, it's impossible to know when that guy's going to swing. It just does not feel good to operate, to use. Like, it just doesn't. It's just so awkward. You don't know when they're actually going to swing you. You have to, like, second guess yourself. It legitimately feels like a nerf. Like, most people would agree on that. So I would say make it scan you like you just got tagged by a Sova drone, but only once. Don't have it scan you like twice like the Sova drone actually does. Just like the one scan for 1 second shows your outline so you can actually see what that person's doing. If it looks like they're leaving, they're about to swing into you, stuff like that. So that yellow outline just feels terrible to use. So this would actually help make that ult make a little more sense. And obviously this is definitely a buff to that ult, but it's more just quality of life because, like I said it 100 times, the yellow outline just feels terrible. So that would help change that. Reyna is adjustments. I would say for the flash, I would buff it, make it take more bullets to kill, and also decrease the price just a little bit. And then her overheal, I would actually nerf that and cap it at 25 armor on pistol. So the thing about Reyna is she's never realistically going to be good in pro play because of the way she's designed. She's just not. She does not provide value like other agents do. She is a get a lot of kills agent, self-sufficient, and that does not work in pro play. The only time you see her played is on a map where her flashes actually get value, like Icebox. But even then, it's just like, she's even like with KayO existing and the way Optic have kind of defined the Icebox meta. No, not at all. She's still not really played there. That's the only map you kind of see arguments for. And then there's very, very, very rare pro teams that run her like Paper X and stuff like that. But the thing is, there's no way to balance her for pro play realistically. But buffing the flash to where it's got a little more health to it, so you have to shoot more bullets into it, might actually potentially have people that are specifically really good with the character have a universe where it's like, okay, we could maybe pick the character here. Still probably not, but it's more of an option is kind of what I'm trying to say. So yeah, and then also healing to 50 armor pistol is just stupid. Like, even if the character's not good in pro play or whatever, like, it's still like you should be able to have 150 on pistol round. That is absurd. So cap it at 25. I just think that would make a lot more sense and it'd be a lot more balanced, specifically in solo queue. Like I said, I talked earlier about like having certain characters, like I'm primarily balancing everybody in the idea that you're in pro play. However, that is also kind of aimed at solo queue, but also still pro play. It's also a factor there. So just a quick little side note for that. So Killjoy, I would do nothing. I think Killjoy is still a pretty good agent. Chamber is just too OP in the current meta. I could see an argument for reverting the tag nerf from the turret if you also nerf its damage, but currently I think she's fine. So yeah, Killjoy is probably the weirdest one to talk about because a lot of people would probably suggest give her some slight buffs, but once again, Killjoy is still good. It's just Chamber is very good. He's just kind of OP. So it's like, because Chamber is so good, you don't see a lot of Killjoy. Similar-ish to the Viper idea, not as much, but kind of, is a similar-ish reason why you don't see KJ. So I think if you actually give Chamber some nerfs and pull his power back down, you'll see Killjoy pop up here and there a little bit more, all that good stuff. And then once again, I think if you were to do a buff, I think reverting the tag nerf from the turret could be good because that actually gives her a bit more of a unique, like, swing off the turret. The turret is actually kind of a problem. It's not just currently info, but also nerf the damage because that thing would literally chip you for like 25 health. Like, it was insane. So it still does, but you can just actually run from it now. So that being said, I think that could be a change that you could do. Potentially change the radius, but I don't even really want to get into that. Like I said, I think Killjoy's still good. Chamber's just insane, and that's kind of the reason for that. Okay, Breach. Nerf, I would make his concuss cooldown from 40 to 48 seconds. Breach is currently rewarded with having set strats with your team, but it's hard to make work in a more puggy environment. That being said, I don't think he really needs a hard nerf. Just some small adjustments for more opportunity because ideas behind his concuss. So yeah, the thing about Breach is in a set environment where everybody knows what to do off of Breach's util, and you have set places to flash, and you have follow-up with these abilities, he's insane. Breach is a very good agent, debatably S tier. Very, very, very good, if not A tier, whatever. But in an environment where Breach is, you don't have as much of that follow-up, you don't have like exact set stuff with your concuss, with your flash, with whatever ability you use, Breach is not quite as valuable. So that being said, he's kind of hard to balance. So it's like currently, like I said, in good organized play, he's very good. And in not as organized play, he's just eh. But you can't super do that because good teams are obviously going to be set with him. So therefore, I kind of do think he needs a small nerf. And so whatever you just reduce the cooldown, or sorry, increase the cooldown to 48 seconds, you just have to have more opportunity cost ideas behind the concuss. And what I mean by that is like, we have 8 less seconds before we're going to get this back up. So it's one of those things where it's like, do I want to use it at the beginning of the round where like they might have the bomb down in 40 seconds and I don't have it for 8 more seconds for like a retake or whatever? That's kind of what I mean by say opportunity cost. If you use it here, you're not going to have it for some other reason. And it's like, you have to actually think about that more. So stuff like that might actually just make people think a little bit harder if they're going to use it or not, because 8 seconds added is a pretty big thing. I could also see an argument for like 45 seconds, 48 might be too much, but yeah, that's kind of my thought behind him. I think Breach is overall in a solid spot, mainly just because, once again, he requires set stuff. But I could see a universe where he might need a nerf or might not. I could definitely see both. So Omen buff, smoke from 150 to 100. This is the one I am the most confident in on this entire list. Omen is a good agent currently, but he has the worst pistol round in the entire game, primarily for controllers, potentially for all characters though. Pistol rounds in Valorant are so incredibly important. You get so much more out of playing Astra or Brimstone for the better pistol round alone, making it $600 and enables him to have most of his utility on pistol rounds. So that's the big thing about Omen, is like when his smokes being 150 makes the pistol so awkward. You either have to full util to where you obviously can get everything, but now you're lacking armor and a gun, so you have a lot less value to shoot back. Or if you want to buy a gun, if you buy armor, you have to have one smoke, which is not the play ever. Or you can't buy the flash, which gives you only 2 smokes. And that's it. Oh, you obviously have your TPs too, but that's like not like huge. That's more niche. So it's like, why would I play Omen with the importance of pistol rounds in Valorant when I only get 2 smokes? That's it. Where I could play Astra where I get 2 smokes and a sucker, a concuss, or I can play Brimstone where I get potentially 3 smokes or 2 smokes and like a molly and a like. That's like the biggest thing. Pistol rounds are insanely important in this game. And Omen's pistol round buy is terrible because of that reason. Making it 100 would enable you to buy armor, 2 smokes, and a flash. And it's like, okay, now you have value. Now you have all of your abilities, most of your kit, whatever. That would actually give the character more value on a pistol round. But right now, he just is not good on pistol. But other than that, I think he's good. I could also see a universe where you potentially decrease his cooldown on his smokes by like a few seconds, but I don't think he really needs that. Biggest issue is really just his pistol rounds. They're terrible. So this is the change that I think absolutely needs to happen like ASAP, because this is bad. It is very feels bad if any of you are Omen players. So Jett nerf, I would make the ult 1 refresh max. The Jett changes were fantastic and definitely brought down her power a lot, but I still think she's very good. One of the big reasons she has a lower pick rate is because of Chamber's presence. If we see Chamber nerf soon, her pick rate's going to go up again. So this would again round her back out, still allow her to be viable. So I have basically a lot of these changes around Chamber, as you can tell, but especially for this one because they're both oppers, both these characters. So yeah, the Jett changes they did recently with the ult or with the dash, like, you know, had to charge it up and all that shenanigans was actually really good. That's probably one of the best changes they've made in the game, because it's really hard to nerf Jett without either killing the character and making her terrible, or making her or keeping her like still insanely overpowered. Like it's really hard to do that. This is probably the best thing they could have done. So props to Riot on that once again. However, she's still a really good agent. I still think she's A tier in my opinion, probably top 5 agent in the game right now. But the thing about opping in this game is like, why pick Jett when you can just pick Chamber, who ops better every single time? So it's like, that's the problem. I think if Chamber were to see nerfs, and hopefully he does, which I'll get into here in a little bit, Jett's pick rate will go back up a pretty good amount. Still not a ton, because Raze fades really good and all that good stuff, but you kind of see where I'm going with this. Like, there needs to be other reasons why Jett is not insane. So I think if you make your ult only have 1 refresh, like, good Jett players can kill your entire team with that ult. And like, there's not another ult in the entire game, excluding Chambers, which could literally just kill your entire team. Like, there's really not. There's obviously arguments that some ults can really like shape that. KJ, I think, is just an argument, of course, kind of. Maybe Breach. Chamber is obviously for sure. Raze, no, not Raze. Actually, I might even say that. Her ult's terrible. Anyways, hopefully you see where I'm going with this. Having it be one refresh max would allow, like, her left click, obviously, not her right click, would still allow her to be good. Like, her ult is still powerful. You could still technically kill the whole team, but you can't just throw knives at somebody 70 times and call it a day. Like, you have to be smart going for all 3 body shots, getting the refresh, and then only being able to do that once again, or like actually going for the head, being smart, whatever. You get the point. You see the idea. So I still think Jett's good. Chamber's just too insane. So her ult is still one of the best in the game, in my opinion. Especially in this game where economy is so important. Having a character that can literally just drop a rifle and use her ult for a rifle in the round or for a weapon, like as a primary, is also insane. So this kind of helps prevent that a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit. So that's what I do there. So, Raze adjustments, ult, fix it. Raze is in a really good spot right now. She's one of the best. She is the best duelist in the game, one of the best characters in the whole game, but her ult is just terrible. And the problem is it's inconsistent. So they need to do something to help that, whether it is literally patch the inconsistency and just fix it or reduce the cost of the point a little bit. I'm not entirely sure what they should do here. It's hard for me to say buff Raze. I have a few other things I might say to do as well. I would also potentially say nerf or buffer blast packs, make them $50 less or 50 credits, but she's so good right now I can't reliably buff the character. It just doesn't make any sense. But her ult is just terrible. Like, it is just, and not even terrible because it's bad, it's just inconsistent. Like, there's so many clips, I guarantee all of you have seen one where you just ult somebody like literally at their feet and they just don't die, and it's like, what, like, how? Like, that just shouldn't exist. So that's technically buffing the character, but it's more so just like fixing it because of how inconsistent it is and how like stupid it can be. So that's what I have to say about Raze. Not a whole lot. Like I said, character is really good. It's hard for me to adjust a lot, but she still, I think, needs some stuff like that. Skye, I would do nothing. I think Skye is the most balanced initiator in the game, if not the most balanced agent in the whole game. Skye's really good. She's definitely probably A tier, so this is a bit of an overstatement to say most balanced. You can make arguments for like characters that would be in like a B tier on like a tier list. But like none of Skye's kit is overly oppressive and unless like on paper, and none of Skye's kit is underwhelming on paper. Like I could see a pitch for like maybe a heal nerf because like it heals a lot. It can heal your entire team or something like that. But for the most part, it's like her flashes are really good, but they're not like OP. The character's just really balanced. There's really not much else to say. Like Skye's in a perfect spot right now. I think that's a really good staple for the game. Good amount of pick rate, not overly picked. KO's argument, all that good stuff. Yoru, also nothing. Yoru requires a very specific player to enable the agent. Also has a lot of setup for that reason. He's not really good or bad. Just needs ideas and strats set around him. Similar-ish idea to Breach, but Breach's value is way more on paper. I'd still say Yoru is not that good. I could definitely still. This is probably the other most debatable one on this list, is to potentially buff Yoru, but like he is good. We've seen teams get value with him. He's currently starting to pop up on Breeze a good bit. We have some teams in NA running him. There's some teams from other regions starting to run him. Obviously, Optic, the best team in the world, ran him on Ascent and got value with him. So Yoru just requires a lot of setup because of the way his teleport works, with the way his flashes work, his fake footstep, like what it does, being able to break like tripwires and stuff. That just needs like setup. Like that's the easiest way to put it, and follow up and understanding, everybody being on the same page of what this character's goal is when he TPs in this spot, whatever. You can say a million things. So that's kind of the thing about Yoru and why I don't think you could buff him, because like if everybody starts to hop on the Yoru train, which I don't think they will, but if you were to buff him and then people start hopping on the Yoru train where he's already like kind of good, just needs a lot of setup, the character is all of a sudden insane. So that's why I don't really think he could do anything. He needs just like setup. That's the best way to put it. So I think Yoru's in a good spot. Astra nerf gravity well vulnerable from 5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Astra is popping back up in meta, and honestly, her suck having 5 seconds of vulnerable is stupid, so that nerf would be something that shouldn't be there in the first place. Yeah, I've always thought Astra, like, the suck is obviously insane, and that's okay that it's really good, but it vulnerabling you for 5 seconds is just, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand that. So obviously, the Astra changes were really, really good. Potentially some of the best changes they've made to any agent. Balanced her incredibly well. However, that vulnerable is just dumb. And obviously with her popping back up in meta, you can make an argument for it because that would once again kind of pull the other Omen and Brimstones kind of back into like, okay, maybe this character, maybe we should play them back over Astra. A lot of the reason for Astra popping back up is because Jett's not as in meta. Raze is in meta, which means it's harder to play against an Astra, or you get more value on defense because you don't have a character that can dash through your suck. And if you have a Raze on your team, you get good value out of your util together with like suck nade, whatever. Like Astra's popping back up in meta mainly just because she fits the meta super well. But like I said, I just think it being 5 seconds vulnerable is dumb. I was debating to remove it entirely, but that would probably give the suck like not a lot of value. People would just eat it and jump through it because like why not? So I did want to quickly say that. So that's what I do. KayO nerf ult revert getting orbs while in the ult. So KayO is pretty powerful and a very good fundamental agent. You can't really change him reliably without hurting him too much. His ult is arguably one of the best in the game, however. Currently, you get orbs while in the ult, and that enables more potential ults in the half. Removing that makes you have to work for a bit more and probably get more value per game. So yeah, basically the way KayO ult works is once you pop it and like your ult is pulsing, you can get kills in it, and that will contribute to your next one. And I am saying remove that. Your ult has to be gone before you can start getting orbs again. It's a very small change that they did. However, I think reverting back to how it was, to where you can't get orbs while it's pulsing, will potentially get you, you'll have to work for it a little more. That's pretty much what I talked about. Or I said here in the little description of like, if you do this change, you're going to have to be you're going to have to probably earn 1 or 2 more ult orbs, maybe even 3 per game to get an ult that time, and it's just gonna have to make you work for it more. So being a little smarter with your usage. It's a very tiny change, and once again, KayO is a very fundamental and good agent fundamentally. So he kind of falls in that trap of like, you can't really change him without him being terrible, or you can't really change him without making him overpowered. So that's something that I do think is difficult, but this would kind of make that ult a little bit less. I could see an argument just for changing the ult entirely from like, not like entirely, sorry, from like reducing a pulse, like where it doesn't pulse. I think it currently is active for 12 seconds, maybe make it active for 9, remove one of the pulses. That's an argument. Whatever, potentially just give it 8 points and maybe add an extra pulse to kind of balance that. There's so many arguments for it. You could do a lot, but I just think this will just kind of help round him out a little bit. Very small thing, but that's something I would do. All right, so on to the infamous chamber, and there's a lot here, but I will go into it quite a bit. So changes I would make to chamber. Number 1, his headhunter, which is his deagle, increase the bullet by 50 credits each. His TP, which is called rendezvous, from 20 seconds to 45, and then his ult, make it 8 points and remove the slow. So I'm going to read the description on all these, and then I'll kind of add my own anecdote, kind of like I have been for everything, but I'll go one at a time. So Headhunter, having a gun you can ADS that is a one-shot that can one-shot kill a fully armored opponent is insane, especially when pairing with the TP. Increasing the price makes it much harder to reliably have multiple shots, resulting in needing to be smarter with the shots and making it more fair for everyone. So yeah, if you like think about that, like imagine Chamber just didn't exist and somebody told you for 100 credits, you can hit a bullet and just kill an entire person. It's like, think about how insane that is. Now, obviously, that's one bullet, so it's hard. I get that. I don't want to sit here and be like too like stuck up on this idea. However, this is mainly focused on like ecos and like pistols. Whenever their chamber is on an eco, he has nothing to lose, so he might as well just swing you and try to one tap you because he can just TP away depending on the scenario. And like, it's not like that happens like once a game. That happens all the time, and like that's a bit absurd. Let's be honest. So I think if you make it 150, it's a lot harder for him to reliably have multiple shots on the pistol specifically, but also for these anti-ecos. If Chamber's broke and he's going into the next round, they're saving and he's about to go into the next round, it's like, I can't just buy 3 bullets for $300 and call it a day. Like that, spending 300 credits is going to get me only 2. And it's like, having 1 less shot is going to narrow it down at the power a little bit. So that's what I would do. I think that one's definitely the most debatable of all these changes. I could see that not being a thing, potentially just capping off how many bullets you have, maybe only giving him like 4, 5, 6 total, but there's still 100, could be decent as well. This is just what I think does it the best way, to where like it's still a good ability and like you still have to be good at the game, obviously, to use it and all that good stuff. However, like it's not like you could just buy 5 shots and call it a day. It's like, no, you have to actually be smart with what you're doing. So that one is the most debatable, I will say. So Rendezvous, his TP, I think you add a 45-second cooldown. So I think get out of jail free cards are terrible for a tactical FPS game. Being able to do whatever you want, where one kill can drastically change rounds is not okay. That's just the first issue. Not talk about having to overinvest utility because they have the option just to eat it because you can TP. There's so many things. Regardless, it should not exist. Not to mention it's on a 20-second cooldown, so you can get 5 a round, which is completely absurd. So the get out of jail free cards is an entirely different topic that I don't know if I want to go super into detail to right now, because I can go on about that forever. But the biggest thing here is like you can potentially get up to 5 TPs a round. Like think about how unbelievable that is. Like that is so absurd that you can get 5 a round. Like I've had so many rounds, and to be fair, and I do want to say 5 rarely happens, but it's true. I've had so many rounds where like I've had a chamber on an eco, by the way, side note, wide swing long, and just one tap somebody and insta TP out, nothing you can do. We like kind of slow down, maybe we go back to re-hit that site, and then he just does it again, and it's like, well, shoot. It's like, great, where was the counterplay for that? Now, you know, that's kind of not the best example, but like, basically what I'm trying to say is being able to TP so many times that quick is just absurd. So I think this is the smartest change. Maybe if it's like, maybe not 25 seconds, maybe it's like from 20 to like 35 or 40, or maybe you just cap it. Like it's still on 20-second cooldown, but you can only do it twice. I think it'd be really good too. I don't know, something like this, like just something like that. Quick get out of jail free card talk is, I do think it's so stupid for that to exist, because these characters will always naturally be insanely powerful. And it's the problem that we have right now as to why Killjoy, Cypher, and even Viper in a way are just not being picked. Because why would I ever pick the Sentinel that can put down a molly and has a turret to spot you when I can swing your ass, one tap you, and I'm out of there? It's like, why? And it's like, that is not okay. And same thing with Jett for the longest time. Obviously, the changes they just made recently-ish were really good, and it's not that way anymore. But you can see the same thing. Jett op was just insane. And like, why would you ever pick any other duelist when you have that ability? And it's like, that's the idea. That's just the first problem, not to mention you have to overinvest utility. I wish I pulled up the clip. I don't want to like escape where I'm at. There's a game recently in RG 100 Thieves where Tex was in showers with an op, and they threw Skydog, 2 flashes, a boombot, and a nade, I think. Literally all of those abilities, and he still was able to get a shot up. Now, he did miss, granted, but he still was able to safely get off a shot after all of that was invested in. It's like, how is that even like allowed? It's just insane. And like, obviously, there's so many arguments for this. You have to have good utility usage. I understand that, and I agree. But it's like, the thing about the get out of jail free cards is not just the fact that like, if I'm sitting in the corner of showers and I'm Astra, it's like, they're just going to run me down because I have nowhere to go. It's like, the thing about a chamber is not necessarily like I can safely take a shot and leave. It's I could safely eat all of your utility and then take a shot and leave. It's like, there's, like I said, I don't want to go too much into detail. It's kind of where I'm going to leave that. I think these abilities just should not exist at all. But the fact that it does. I think Chambers is, I will say, the best way to do it. The fact that Chamber, it is anchored to a point, does help. I will quickly add that. The fact that, like, oh, if Chamber isn't, like, a yellow outline, we see in his TP zone, it's like, we just got to flush him out of this little area. That is the best way to do it, which is why I don't want to, like, kill the ability, but you should not get that many in a round, in my opinion. So now ult, this is the quickest and most easy one. The most value of chamber op is not even the op itself. I don't know why I wrote that. That's not entirely true, but this is still a good point. It's the fact that you have to spend nothing on that round, so you likely have econ for the next 3 rounds for an op. Increasing the cost of the ult helps prevent this and forces better econ overall. Also, the slow is just a bad mechanic for both sides. And then, yeah, so quickly on the slow, I just think the slow is dumb. Like, obviously, it's definitely more of a, I think I even said it here, it's going to hurt the team getting hit by it more. But, like, have you ever, like, had your chamber op somebody on T side and then your team tries to take that area? It's just like, it just feels bad. So just remove the slow. It shouldn't exist, or it just doesn't make any sense. So on to the whole economy point is, like, the thing I think that makes chamber op so good is the fact that, like, let's say my team's on a buy round and I'm, like, close to having enough money for an op, or I can buy an op, or even if you can't, whatever, I'm just going to pop my ult and have like 4K in the bank If we win that round and I go to the next one, I have like 7K. I could buy an op that round, that next coming round with like light armor, and it's like great. Now I still have 2.5K in the bank. Let's say even if you lose that round, you go into the next round with like 5K and you buy another op. That's the biggest issue. You just gain like 3K or however 3,000 credits because you pop the ult. That's a lot of the issue with it. So if you make it 8 points, you get to do that less, meaning you get less overall ops in a half, which is obviously like where Chamber's value is. So that's the biggest argument for that. So anyways, this is definitely the biggest one that is debatable. Some people don't think Chamber needs nerfs at all right now, and I honestly can understand it in a way because his value on attack is definitely super limited, but that's definitely why he needs adjustments. And I can even see them buffing a different part of his kit for that reason of like this character is S tier on defense, but like C tier on attack. And it's like, that doesn't feel good to play with from either side really. So it's like, yeah, I think they need to overall make some adjustments towards like you have the argument so you can start pulling another Sentinels or whatever reason you want. So this is the most debatable. Please argue if you're going to talk about anything in the comments, but I want to hear this one more than anything. I would love to hear people chat about this ult or this change. So please let me know if you think it's stupid, you think I'm an idiot. I want to hear it. I want to hear why. I would love to see other opinions. So that's what I have to say about Chamber. Insane agent right now, definitely S tier, but he has a little too much power. Neon nerf. I don't know why I put nerf. This is supposed to say buff. The current energy drain from 6.7 seconds to 8 seconds. So Riot made changes recently that was overall net nerf to Neon, so adding back some, not all, power to her run will balance it out more. She didn't really nerf in the first place. So you can kind of argue that the changes that they did, it was more of adjustments, meaning it was like they nerfed some parts, buffed some other. It was like just adjustments, but I think it's definitely overall a net nerfs. A lot of the value of Neon is being able to rotate pretty quickly, and also just like being able to get to your team pretty fast, however you want to look at it. So whenever they nerf the energy drain, it's like by the time you run back to your team, it's like you can't run at all anymore, and it's like it's a bit much. So I think if you give it less energy drain per whatever. Did I say this backwards? Basically what I'm trying to say is like you drain you just drain less when you're running. I don't know if I put the numbers in there correctly now that I look at it. That way, whenever you get to your team, hypothetically, you could still have a little bit to run for like the entry into site, or you could rotate and still have some for like later, whatever. That's just all I would say is like overall, give this a slight buff, because I just didn't think that change was needed in the first place. Neon is just good, high B tier, low A tier, I would say. I think Neon's probably one of the best designed agents in the game. When it comes, because like that's what fast and like chaotic should be. It's not stupid. She's just fast. It's as simple as that. So. I think the change that they made to her just didn't really make sense. So this kind of give her back some power. And last but not least is Fade. I would definitely give Fade a little nerf. So I would make the Prowler from 3.5 seconds to your sight to 3, and make the C's where you're like locked into it from 4.5 seconds to 3.5. So Fade is a really well-designed agent with a lot of unique abilities. The Prowler and C's, however, CC for a bit too long, giving it less counterplay. Reducing the CT time on these abilities results on the team needing to be quicker with their follow-up. So CC is like a league term. It means crowd control. It means anytime you are basically debuffs, so like vulnerable, nearsighted, held in place from the C's, whatever, however you want to look at it. That's kind of what CC is. So, yeah, you can't really price increase anything because that would make her kit way too expensive. And her I don't think is OP. It's just good. It can be OP, but like it has obvious counterplay. Like thing about a Prowler is like if you get hit by it, it's like you can't do anything for that a long time. Same with the C's. If you're stuck in its radius, you can't do anything for a long time. So I think just making these CCU for a little bit less forces the other team to, if they want to properly capitalize on these abilities, they have to be a bit more smart with that. They can't just like reload their gun and then swing you or something. That's a stupid example, but hopefully you kind of see what I'm trying to say. Like you have to be a bit smarter with how you decide to follow up these abilities. That's all it would be. Very, very light nerf, but I do think it's needed. So end of that. Thanks for watching. Please leave feedback, good or bad. Like I said, I just want opinions. I want to see what people think. At the end of the day, once again, these are my opinions. So please don't hate me for this. Don't come at me like I'm some evil person if you disagree with something I said. This just, I thought it would be fun to make. And I thought, I just wanted to see what people had to think about it and see what people had to say. Things I would currently do. Once again, I actually think the game's in a really good state. Not a whole lot of changing is needed other than do a couple agents. But for the most part, I just do this for fun. I think it's really enjoyable to talk about these things. So that's kind of all I got. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.